The Eternals, Marvel Studios' latest entry in their cinematic universe. I watched it recently, enjoyed it. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. It was very ambitious, and I liked that Marvel sort of had a go at doing something a little bit different. Although it did still feel very much like a Marvel film. Structurally, it felt unique, and we were sort of given different types of relationships than we're typically used to. But I don't really feel like reviewing it. I feel more like just talking about what I would have done to change the film to make it fulfill its promise even more. I'm not a screenwriter by any means. I don't think I can do a better job than the people that did the film. But I just think personally these changes would have maybe, I think, made the vision that was clearly there come to fruition. So first of all, spoilers. I'm gonna go straight into spoilers. So at the end of the film, we find out that the Eternals, they've been deceived. They're not from the planet they've been told they're from. They're these non-organic creatures that were made by the Celestials to kill their precursor. So the Deviants were also created by the Celestials for their own means, but fell out of the Celestials' control. So the Eternals were created to combat them. It kind of reminded me of the Manhunters from the DC universe. The Guardians of Oa first created the Manhunters to police the universe, but then they went crazy. So the Green Lanterns were created. So it's kind of a similar situation. It differs from the comics in the sense that in the comics the Celestials create the Eternals, but they create them by going to Earth and then experimenting on the humanoid life that's already there, and then the experimentation leads to the creation of the Eternals and the Deviants, who are essentially superpowered beings that live for a very, very long time, stronger, faster, can fly, shoot laser beams, those kind of things. So for me, this reveal felt a bit hollow in the sense that they shrugged it off very, very easily. You know, the actual revelation of finding out you aren't what you think you are. Not you aren't who you think you are. You aren't even what you think you are. I feel like we could have delved a bit more into that. And I think part of the issue of this film is I think it's too big for a single film. The Eternals, Jack Kirby's ideas, his creations, there isn't anything that Jack Kirby made in his tenure as a comic book writer that can fit in a 2.5-hour film. I don't think his imagination was too broad, too wide. He created too much stuff for any of it to be succinctly put into a 2.5-hour film. So I think the film was already sort of up against it in that sense. So yeah, I think delving into that sort of moment of realization of seeing that you're not really what you think you are would have been cool. I think we didn't really delve much into the idea of what it meant to be immortal for them. Sprite kind of at the end sort of talks about how she wishes she could grow up, but we don't really get any sort of idea of what it means to be immortal. And I think that's partly because only one of the Eternals had a relationship with a human being. That was Faustus. The rest of them had all kind of paired off of each other. Gilgamesh and Thena had a pairing. They weren't romantically involved, but they were each other's sort of like handlers / carer, and they loved each other in a way that is platonic but also romantic, but they weren't sexual with each other. Icarus and Circe are together. Obviously Sprite had no romantic interest. Droog and Makari are together. So because they were kind of all paired off in a sense, then there was never that worry, because of course like they're all like, well, my partner's immortal too, so I don't have to worry about that. Only Faustus had a mortal partner, and we only spent a little bit of time with them. And it would have been nice to sort of hear from Faustus's husband about how he feels about knowing the fact that his partner will never age and he will age and die. Even they have a son together, they have an adopted son together, and it's like that we don't really hear much about how Faustus feels about the fact that his partner and his child will eventually, he will outlive them both and they'll both die. Like, we didn't really get much of like that, and I think that's a very interesting psychological thing to delve into that was kind of like left on the cutting room floor. Another thing is the way they were presented as characters. I feel like they were too human. All of them were too human off the bat. I feel like there should have been some sort of distance or cold or alienness from them to start with that would then sort of like ebb away, fade away as we go through the ages. Also, I don't think we saw enough of the Eternals throughout history. People might not have liked how they jumped from back and forth time periods. I would have liked if we got a lot more of them throughout the ages and in much more pivotal moments in history. Like, the only markable moment we get is Faustus reacting to the Hiroshima cloud. But we don't, like, I would have loved to see more events in that same vein, like more events that were like the critical points of history, and seeing how they reacted to that, and maybe and through using those kind of points, that could have been the thing that then made them more human, made them more empathetic to humans, and like that would have been just maybe a better way to delve into that, with my personal opinion. We didn't get much of that. So yeah, they felt too human off the rip, so there wasn't really much of a distinction of them from regular people, which might have been the point. But again, I think if you have these characters who are immortal and also have these powers beyond reason, I think dealing with that power in that way, I think, is important. The next thing I'd say is the Unimind. I think the Unimind should have been something they could have done from the start. I think it should have been a nuclear option given to them by the Celestials themselves. Something along the lines of, you can all link up and give each other enough power to stop the convergence if you so choose, but the cost of it will be your immortality. That should have been the story they were told by the Celestials about if they use the Unimind to stop the convergence. But then obviously we know that the convergence actually leads to the planet being destroyed. But what I think should have happened is, because they are one group of many Eternals that are throughout the universe, this can't be the first time that a bunch of Eternals have thought, we actually love these people, we love this planet, and then decided, let's stop the convergence, let's stop the planet from being destroyed. So therefore, I think the Celestials should have given the Unimind to the Eternals as this thing of where if you do this, you can stop the convergence, but it'll cost you your immortality. And then the twist is, in reality, it's actually a failsafe for the Celestials. They can't stop the convergence. It's a trick. They die. If it's like a failsafe to kill the Eternals if they try to stop the convergence. And then to stop that in this movie, because we have a deviant who essentially becomes more sentient as he absorbs an Eternal's power. So as a good side story leading into that idea would be, the deviant takes an Eternal's power, but also takes on their personality, also takes on their memories. And then as he does this a bit more and more, because I think he kills like 3 of them, start out hunting them in like clever ways, using other deviants to sort of draw them into the open, being a bit more of like an assassin hunting them. Then when he gets to the final battle during the convergence, after he's absorbed these many Eternals, and he now knows the Celestials' true nature too, he should join the Unimind, and then because he joins the Unimind, that's what then gives them the edge and the ability to stop the convergence and end the sort of situation. I think that would have been a really, really good way to sort of use that plot point, because it kind of just seemed very like, oh yeah, I'm Faustus, I've discovered we can do this Unimind thing, and it's like it just seemed a bit rushed and not fleshed out enough. I think tweaking it that way, making this failsafe that they've been given by the Celestials, but then in the end being a trap, but then that trap being undone by the enemy that they've been hunting this whole time, I think that would have been a really, really cool thing to do. Also, I would have tried to show why Icarus and Cersei actually like each other. I don't think we ever got any of that other than Icarus think that she's beautiful. This is, Marvel's first sex scene. Cool, we didn't really need it. I think we could have benefited from seeing why they actually like each other, because the only thing that we kind of saw that showed they liked each other was just the fact that they both thought they were attractive, and there wasn't anything deep about the relationship. So it felt kind of stale to me. I didn't really care about Icarus and Cersei's relationship too much. Yeah, I think we could have definitely dived into that, to why they like each other a bit more. But yeah, I by no means feel this movie was a failure. I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I probably won't rewatch it. I don't think I need to. But I just think if they tampered with things and done it a little bit differently, it could have fulfilled its promise a lot better. I kind of wonder how the MCU is going to reconcile the existence of some of these characters. So, for example, some of these Eternals characters are suggested to be they are the reason for certain myths, legends, and characters in human history. So, like Athena is described as the goddess of war, the Athena the Eternal. However, in the Marvel comics proper and in the MCU in the future, I'm assuming, the Greek gods, the Olympians, that pantheon of gods, they exist too. So Athena, the actual god, is a real character too, as well as Athena the Eternal, who is supposedly the person that was the protector of Athens, and also called the goddess of war. So it's like those two separate characters exist at the same time in the same universe. How do you reconcile that? I guess you could probably do something along the lines of, well, humans couldn't tell the difference between the two of them because, godlike creatures look the same to all humans. But I don't know, it just seems that would seem a bit cheap. So I'm kind of wondering how they reconcile certain mythological creatures and characters that exist in the MCU existing alongside the Eternals, and how their sort of stories ended up being interlinked somehow, some way. I'm also kind of wondering how mutants will be introduced into the MCU now, because traditionally the experiments that created the Eternals in the comics leads to the creation of the X gene in humans later down the line. So the Eternals are essentially robots in the MCU. So I'm kind of wondering how will the mutants be introduced, considering that deviants and Eternals are no longer the result of experimentation on humans. They're just separate creatures that were created by the Celestials. I'm kind of wondering what happens in that going forward with that.